So everything that we're saying will be listened to. So let's begin with a joke. There's this Jew who goes to the Western Wall every single day for year after year, day after day, and he's praying there. So finally, another individual sees him come every day. He says, "What are you praying for?" He says, "I'll be honest. I'm praying for everlasting peace in the Middle East." He says, "And how do you feel your prayer is working?" He says, "I'll be honest. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a wall." Okay. Here's a another joke. This this guy comes to the doctor. He says, "I tried getting my wife to come, but she wouldn't come." He says, "What's the problem?" He says, "The problem is that my wife is hard of hearing. And I don't know how to get her to hear me. I try to speak to her. I speak again and again, and she doesn't listen. I can't. She doesn't hear me." So he says, "I have a good idea for you. Next time you want to speak to her, stand 20 feet away and say something to her. Then if she doesn't answer, walk 5 feet. Say the same thing. And then you do it until you know where she can hear you. What distance? Fine." He comes home. His wife is there in the kitchen. He stands 20 feet away and he says, "I love you, my dear." No response. Walks 5 feet. "I love you, my dear." No response. Walks another 5 feet. "I love you." Finally, he comes literally up to her face. And she says, "For the fourth time, I love you back." Okay. So the art of listening is truly an art because how many of us are all too familiar with, we have a conversation with someone and then we walk away and we feel, did this person actually listen to me? Or they just, let the words go one ear through the other ear and out. And that's really the question. Do we always feel like we are listening to people or we are being listened to? Right? There's a difference between hearing and listening. This is one is, you hear, it goes one ear and it goes out the other ear. The other one is listening. When you actually listen, when you are what they call today active listening. Active listening. The word Shema Yisrael, the most fundamental Jewish prayer, Shema means not just to hear it, but to listen to it. To listen, to connect with it. And that's what we're going to try to delve into in tonight's conversation is how we could be better listeners. Because by listening, it's more than just hearing something. We are connecting with the person. When we listen to someone, when we spoke last week at length, we spoke about there's cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. And Joseph was able to have emotional empathy, if you recall, with the two people that he met in jail. He's able to connect to them, feel them, know what they're going through, and be there for them. He heard their whole story and he listened to their story. He didn't interrupt their story. And each one was able to say it at great length. And that's what we want to try to delve into tonight. And so there's something very important to appreciate because when we have a true ability to listen, when we're listening, we're not just listening and moving on, we're connecting with the person. Listening translates into connection. And if we want to have a true connection with our circle of friends, we need to be able to listen to them. And when we actually listen to them, we're actually connecting to them. And so let's begin by an exercise. Page 52 in your book. If for some reason you don't have the book, please let me know to make sure you got a book. We have a book for everyone. And we're going to take a few minutes to grade ourselves I did this myself. It's quite enlightening, and I think you'll appreciate. We'll give ourselves a few minutes to go through this questionnaire. And the way it works is like this. This is a questionnaire from Michael Nichols, The Lost Art of Listening. You'll grade yourself A, B, C, and D. Almost never, sometimes, often, or almost always. There's no wrong and no right. Nobody's going to look at this, but it's just good for you to know it for yourself. And there's quite a few questions, 25 questions in total. And when you come to the end, you'll be able to score yourself. So first you'll write the answer, and at the end you'll score yourself. So go through and write the answer A, B, C, and D. Give yourselves 3 minutes, 4 minutes to go through this. Okay? Okay. Okay, when you come to the end, then you score yourself. You'll see on page 55 how to score yourself. First, you score all the odd number questions. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and D is 4. And then score your even number questions. Opposite way. A will be 4, B will be 3, C will be 2, and D will be 1. Okay. Are we almost finished? Okay. We're good? Here's the point. It's important to do this small exercise before. I think this will give a much deeper appreciation for the class tonight. That's why I felt it take a few minutes to do this discussion because there's the total number of points is 85 to 96 is excellent, and anyone reached to that score because if you did, then I'm moving to the side and you're giving the class tonight. Above average is even 73 to 84. Average is 61 to 72. 61 to 72. Below average is 49 to 60. Poor is 25 to 48. The point is, many of us could enhance our skill in listening. It's a skill to listen. And it's not that we have to share the results that we have, you know, and but the main thing is for ourselves. And therefore, tonight we're going to delve into a lot about this topic, but an overview. We'll break it into four different subjects. Number one, first of all, we're going to discuss three ways that listening is crucial for our relationships. Number two, we will get into how Jewish mysticism motivates a better listening. Number three, we will go into how authentic listening, what it really entails. And number four, we'll give actual behaviors, things that we could do to make ourselves a better listener. So let's jump right into it. Okay? Number one, everyone knows the Haggadah. The Haggadah on Passover that we read, we have the four sons, the four kids that come to the Seder. The Torah says there's the wise son, there's the wicked son, there's the simple son, then there's a son who doesn't even know how to ask a question. You got the four sons. Okay? Now let's read on page 57. Let's see here on page 57. Here we have four verses in the Torah. These four verses almost sound identical. And yet, these four verses are speaking about different people. Let's see these four verses. Page 57, Sarah. You want to read for us the four verses?
The,
Go. Yeah.
the children questions?
Yeah.
Okay. When your children say to you, what is this service to you? You shall say XYZ. Next one. You shall tell your child on that day, saying XYZ. In the future, when your child asks you, what is this? You shall say XYZ. In the future, when your child asks you, what are these testimonies, statutes, and ordinances that our God has commanded you? You shall say XYZ.
Okay. So here we got four different verses in the Torah, four different places that the Torah talks about. And on the surface, they all sound like they're saying the same thing. The child's asking you a question, say XYZ. Right? The child has this, the child has that, answer them this. But the truth is, every single one of these are different verses. You see, one child specifies, he said, testimonies, statutes, ordinance. Which child is that? The wise child. Very good, Jenny. Right? The wise child says, he asks, what are all these different laws? And he also says something else. He says, our God, meaning he's including himself in it. It's our God. I'm part of it. Another child says, He just protests. He says, "What is this service to who? To you." He's not even including himself in it. Which one is this one? Exactly, the wicked one, the mischievous one. Then you have a child that says, "What is this? Like, what's going on? I'm like lost." That is the simple son.
What makes that mischievous?
The second one,
Yeah, what happened?
because he says, "What's the service to you?" Daniel's asking, "What is the? How does he doesn't include himself? He's saying, what are you guys doing? I don't even know what you're doing here. What are you doing here?" Well, he doesn't even care about this for himself. He's he's distancing himself from it.
What other person's perspective on something is?
It could be, but he's sitting there and still he's saying, like, "What are you doing here? I don't know what you're doing here. This doesn't mean anything to me." So because he's not connecting himself with everyone, therefore we know that this is a different type of child. It's a child that's not interested in being there. The next one is the simple one, and then the last one is the one that doesn't even ask any question. Meaning, this child doesn't really know what's going on. He just says, what is it?" You should just tell your child saying, because this one doesn't even know what's going on. You just tell him. So you have to teach him. The point is, here's the point, that when you have different verses, it's different people, it's different situations. Each one has something unique about them. And therefore, when we listen to what our children are saying, we're not just listening, we're listening because if we listen properly, then we can actually really provide for them what they need. And that's what the Torah is telling us. Listen, because if you listen to someone, then you could properly provide them what they need as an answer. That's what the Haggadah of Passover is such a lengthy Haggadah, because it needs to respond to each one of these children. It responds in 4 different ways, explaining the Passover story. So the first idea in listening is when you listen, you could provide. That's number one. The next thing is listen to know. When you listen to someone, you know who they are. What's interesting to note is in the Haggadah, in the Hebrew, the wording is, you can see this in text 2, page 59. Let's read this here. The 4 types of children inquire according to their respective natures. This is the deeper interpretation of the statement. The one who is wise, what he is saying. If you want to know what is he, analyze his saying. In Hebrews, this sounds better. Chacham, mahu omer. Rasha, mahu omer. Tam, mahu omer. What does that mean? The wise one. What is he? Who is he? It's what he says. If you hear what they're saying and you listen to what the person's saying, you can know who the person is. By listening to people, you can know what type of personality they are, what type of person they are, what type of interest they have. What, you know what? You want to know if this is a wise person, this is a simple person, listen to the way they're saying things, to the questions they ask, to the interactions they have, the stories they tell. The way a person speaks is who they are. So if you listen to the person, you'll get to know the person. So therefore, it's so important to listen to people. Because when we listen to people, number one, we're able to provide them what they need. And number two, we're able to also understand who they are, right? And I'll give an example in the first point and then a story in the second point. Let's say a person is waiting for someone to come to a meeting. And they come a little late. They come 5 minutes late. They're always on time. But this day they come late. The friend screams and says, every day you always come late. What does the friend answer? Every day I come late. Today I came late. I don't always come late. And you come late, and what do you call me late? I'm not even interested in meeting with you, talking to you. You know, what did this friend really mean? It didn't mean that every day you came late. It's like they're annoyed. Why do you come late today? You're sitting on the every day. It's just meaning, you came late. You're getting so lost in the everyday. So you have to understand what a person is saying. If you understand what people are saying, you're able to give them what they need. You're able to provide. That's number one. Number two is the second point is what he is what he says. And I want to give you a story, a beautiful story. There was a great chassid. His name was Reb Mendel Futterfass. Anyone ever heard of Reb Mendel? We've shared some stories about his life in the past. He was a very unique individual. Reb Mendel, what's your name? Daniel, who's here with us. His second name is Mendel. Reb Mendel was sent to a gulag to Siberia for 14 years. And he had a lot of sorrows, a lot of pain. A few of his kids died when they were young from illness. Another one, years later, was in a crash and was unfortunately killed after he finally came out of Russia in the 60s. Just a few years later, his daughter. But there was while he was in this gulag in Siberia, he was the only Jew there. All the people around him respected him. And he would take lessons he would learn for the people he was with. For example, in his barrack, they would play cards. And they didn't allow you to play cards. So one day, a group of soldiers, Russian, the KGB, whatever they were, they come in, storming in. They moving the cards. No cards could be found. They left. The cards came out again. They continued playing. A few minutes later, they hear the noise. Quickly, they collect the cards. And where are the cards? They can't find it. This repeats itself a number of times. Finally, when they leave, Mendel turns to one of the main people in the barrack. He says, tell me, what are you doing? What's the trick? They say, it's very simple. When they come in, we quickly collect the cards. We pass it to the guy in the front. As the guy walks in, we put it into his back pocket. They go searching for the cards. They search in our pockets, in our beds, underneath, except for themselves. The moment they leave, we have a good pickpocketer. He's professional. He takes it and he gets it back for us, and we continue playing. And he used to share this story. He said, we always go searching, and everybody else has problems. We forget to look. Now maybe the problem is in ourselves, And he had many of these beautiful anecdotes. I have a few books they put on about his life and his stories. So here's a story. In 1994, it was a few months before he passed away. He was in England living with his son. Very hard for him to go to synagogue on Shabbat. So one Shabbos afternoon, he's sitting with his son, and an individual comes in, says, Reb Mendel, I must share with you an incredible story that was shared at the Kiddush. After services, we had a farbrengen, we had a gathering, and someone shared an incredible story. And he goes on to share the story. And Mendel's listening, intrigued. Now this individual leaves, Mr. Patash. And he goes home. A few minutes later, someone else comes to the house. Mr. Lowenthal. Lowenthal says, Reb Mendel, I must share with you a story you've never heard this story. It's an incredible story. And he goes on to share with him the exact same story. Reb Mendel listens to the whole story. Lowenthal leaves. A little bit later comes in Rabbi Lou, great rabbi in England. Rabbi Lou says, "Yeah, Mendel, today at the Kiddush, a story was shared. Whoa, I need to share with you the story." And he goes on, he shares the details of the exact same story. When Rabbi Lou leaves Mendel, Mendel's son, who was with him, says, Mendel, I don't understand. You heard the story one time. I sang about you. How do you hear the same story so many times? He says, no. I didn't hear the same story 3 times. I heard 3 different stories. 3 different people shared. And I heard how this one got excited by this part. This one got excited by that part. I heard the way they were sharing the story. Everyone had a different story. This one was excited about the message of the story. This one was excited about the inspiration that this person had. This one was excited about the love of God. Everyone was excited at a different part of the story. It was a different story. And Mendel was listening to the person, and he was connecting to the person. So this is an art. The art of listening gives us the ability to know about the person. What does this person care about? What is this person about? Who is this person? You hear it in the way that they talk. And here's a third point, and that is when we listen, we connect. When we listen, it's not just that we're listening to know knowledge. We're listening because we want to hear some information that this person is going to share with us. When you listen, you're connecting to the person. There's a book, it's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And over there it says these words in this book. It's a line in the book. It says, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. In listening, the main thing is the connection that you have with the person. A lot of times we feel like when we're listening to someone, we're gaining knowledge from the person. Wow, amazing. And if I already know this information, I don't have to listen. I can move on. But the ability to really listen is to really connect to people. It's the ability to connect. When you listen to someone, you're actually connecting to the person. This is brought out in a verse in Shir Shirim, Song of Songs, text 3, page 60. God, the book of Songs written by King Solomon. This is a parable of our connection with God. What does God say? Show me your appearance. Let me listen to your voice. For your voice is pleasant and your appearance is comely. What does God want? God wanted to, this is referring to our matriarchs, their prayer, because they prayed to God for children. Many of them didn't have children right away. Sarah, Rebecca, Rivka, Rachel, even Leah, who did have children, she wanted that her husband should still love her. They're praying to God. So God is saying, I love your voice. I love your prayer. That's why I love you connecting to me. Maybe that's why they didn't have children right away, because God loved their prayer. If it's good or not good, but this is what God was saying here. The idea in general, by the way, prayer, the word prayer in Hebrew is tefillah. Tefillah in Hebrew means what? Anyone knows? No, not prayer. Prayer means that I need something and I'm praying for that something. A prayer, even if you don't need, you pray. So what's the real translation of the word prayer? Tefillah means to connect. Prayer is not about asking for something. Prayer is about connecting to God. So when we are praying, we're not praying, we're connecting to God. And when we're listening to someone, we're connecting to that person. When we're praying, we're connecting to God, and God is connecting to us. It's a connection moment. Of course, God knows everything that we need. God knows if we need something. God knows if we're missing something. Does God really need to hear us? Does God need to hear our prayer? God desires our connection. That's what God wants. God wants our connection. The same is true in human relationships. Just like God desires connection, the same is true of people. People want connection. And when we're having a conversation, it's not that we're learning something from the person. Yes, we might also learn something, but it's more about the connection with the person. When you listen to someone else talk, you're connecting to this person. And that is the third idea of understanding and listening. It's listening so we can connect to people. And that is a tremendous blessing. Okay. And all this leads back to the great point that we spoke about at length last week. And that is that all of this is based on the fundamental of this whole course. And that is the uniqueness of the individual, of the person. That we are a makeup of two souls. We are not one soul that is a bodily soul that yearns and desires everything for ourselves. Rather, we have two souls. We have an animal soul and we have a godly soul. Our animal soul is a soul that is all about ourselves. It's all about what I need. Our godly soul is what I am needed for. What I am needed for. If it's all about our animal soul, which by the way is our natural soul, it's our natural speaker and it's our natural listener, because that's our original self. And that's why it's so hard for us to listen, right? Isn't it hard for us to listen? Let's be honest. Yes, it's very, very challenging for many of us to listen. But why is that? Because that's our animal soul. Our animal soul is our natural soul. And it's all about ourselves. What am I going to gain from it? I already know the information. I don't listen to you anymore. What do you have to tell me? It's not interesting. I'll walk away. You're saying something. Oh, I'm so sorry. One ear, that other ear. The godly soul says, I crave connection. I want to connect to you. And therefore, whatever you're saying is important. I'm going to listen to you because I want to connect to you. Whatever you're saying is important because you're saying it to me. And therefore, I want to learn more about you, like we said before. So if we're more in tune with our godly soul, living more a meaningful life, a deeper life, and it's not just that we're more spiritual, we're more connecting. We're more connecting to all those who we're surrounding ourselves with. So to listen is really to tap into our better self. When we're listening to someone, we're really tapping into our deeper self. Okay. And here we're going to get into another very, very powerful idea in listening. When we listen, there's another reason why our soul's consciousness is crucial to this skill of listening. Why? Because, here, let me just give a little base and then we'll watch a video. Okay? In the Chassidic world, not just Chabad in general, Chassidic world, the power of prayer is a very, very big fundamental. Prayer is not just something you just do, for 5 minutes, you get over with it. You wrap the tefillin quickly, you say the Shema, and you're done with. It's a whole service of God. It's a whole emotional opportunity to connect to God. Like if you really want to connect to God, it doesn't just happen. You got to wake up in the morning, contemplate about God, first learn about God, think about who you're talking to, think about the world, think about your connection, and then you can actually really connect to God. And then the prayer itself, you say the word slowly and you think about it, and you're really emotionally into it. There were people that prayed the entire day. They started 2 a.m., 3 a.m. for hours preparing themselves, and they started praying. By the time they finished, they had to get ready for the afternoon prayer, then the evening prayer, and the whole day they were praying. And this is the video they're going to watch of such a person. Well, let's see what came out of it.
Rabbi Hillel of Parich was a master teacher of Hasidus and Jewish mysticism. When Reb Hillel traveled, his student Reb Shalom Homener would accompany him. One evening, they stopped at an inn and Reb Shalom began to pray the evening service. As part of the prayers, Hasidim often meditate deeply on the nature of God as well as undertake profound soul-searching. Reb Shalom spent so long meditating and praying that by the time he completed, the sun had risen. So, Reb Shalom began the morning service. Later that day, the innkeeper came to pray the afternoon prayers and saw that Reb Shalom was still in the middle of the morning service. The innkeeper, who was a simple villager, exclaimed, "What is it with this Jew? Yesterday he spent the whole night in prayer, and now he has prayed the whole day. I'm different. I can just say Shema Yisrael and be done with it." Obviously, this man is a simpleton. Reb Shalom had completed his prayers and overheard this remark. His mentor, Reb Hillel, later commented, "The words of the simple villager had more impact on Reb Shalom in terms of self-improvement than 3 years of me teaching him the deepest secrets of Jewish mysticism."
Okay, what do we see from this story? Let's analyze it for a moment. The innkeeper mistook this great person, Shalom, for a struggle to be able to read, the inability to read. Really, what could he have done? He could have said, "You're a simple person. You could barely, even study anything after the Talmud. I've been learning for years and studying with one of the greatest sages of the time. And who are you? But what did he do? He didn't. He actually embraced a purpose mindset. A purpose mindset, which is that everything that he heard was for a reason. The fact that God made me hear this line is because that was the way God was talking to me. Many times we ask the question, does God even listen to me? God doesn't talk to people anymore. Moses, God spoke to him, maybe the prophets, maybe if you go back, Mordecai, Esther, some of the great people, Maimonides, maybe had some great Baal Shem Tov, but me, a simple person, God talks to me here. God doesn't talk to us, it's 2024, But the truth is, yes, God does. God has his ways of sending us a message by the words and the interactions that we have, and the people that we interact with, and the things that they tell us. That's for a reason. And so, if it's all about what do I get from it, the animal soul, what do I need, what am I going to gain, then who are you to tell me? But if it's what am I needed for, what am I in this world for, what's the purpose? Everything is for a reason. And the fact that I heard this conversation and this person said that to me, that must mean that there's something for me to learn from this. And so this is a fundamental idea. And we could summarize this idea in text 5. Let's see, it's page 65. Jenny, why don't you read for us over here? Page 65 there.
The Bible teaches that all of that God created in his world, not a single thing was created without purpose. This principle extends to all events and occurrences, none of which is purposeless, for all that transpires is directed by personal divine providence. Similarly, awareness of specific information is not purposeless. We are not made aware of anything relevant to our service or fault.
Thank you. So we have over here the Reb Shalom who exemplified this idea. Whatever he heard, he knows for a reason. It wasn't the fact that this person said a foolish statement. It was for a reason that God wanted me to hear this thing. So nothing in life is irrelevant. And the fact that I heard this is for a reason. There's a video we watch as kids that a mailman came and he heard uh, someone by mistake, he lost something. He said, divine providence. This is divine providence. Hashkacha pratit. And then something else happened, and the boy said, I missed the bus. This is hashkacha pratit. So he said, what's this hashkacha pratit? Hashkacha pratit is the fundamental of Judaism, which is that everything that God does is for a reason. Divine providence. God oversees every single little detail. And the fact that you were in this space at this moment and hearing this thing is for a reason. And it's because you were supposed to hear this. So nothing is by mistake. And therefore, if you heard something, then you should take it as a message for something that you could grow and you could take something from that. And therefore, if you appreciate this idea, then there's something very powerful in listening. When you listen to someone, it's not just that you're listening because this person's talking. You're listening because when this person is saying something to you, who is really saying that to you? God is saying that to you. This is a message that God wants to convey to you in this form. Whoever and whatever you're hearing, it's for a purpose, for a reason. God, for a reason, wanted you to be in that moment. And so therefore, when you hear something, it's not random. It's God giving you this message. So you're listening because you're listening to this for you to know what your purpose in life is, what you're here for, and what's, your message for the day. And the more you're in tune with different interactions, the more your whole life becomes a more meaningful life. And of course, this is something that only our godly soul could be in tune with. If our whole life, it's all about what I'm going to gain from it, we're never going to listen. We're never going to think that anything that someone's saying to us is for us to grow. You said that. You don't know what you're saying. I don't care what you're saying. We'll always dismiss everything instead of appreciating, maybe I'm hearing this because I'm supposed to hear this. Okay. Any questions, comments before we move on?
Small questions.
Yes, Jenny.
So a friend of mine and I used to talk about learning how to and he would say, but we might never know the reason. How does that fit into what you're talking about?
So Jenny's asking that sometimes, you can have people say that everything is for a reason, but then how do you know always what the reason is, right? So the truth is, you don't always know what the reason is, but you could try to be more in tune and slowly try to understand if there is a reason, you'll start picking it up. Maybe the reason isn't for you to utilize this conversation today, but you'll need it for a conversation that you'll have in 6 months. You'll be like, oh, I heard this, and this actually will help me when I'm dealing with this challenge. Or I could connect this person and that person because this person was telling me that this is their job, and I actually was listening to what they were saying, and this person can help that person, So you never know. Maybe it's not for today, but it will come a time that every piece of information you hear is actually needed for you to hear it. And if you'd actually hear it, there will come a time when that piece of information will be useful for your life. So if you're actually listening, your whole life will be a much deeper life, and you'll know how to live a better life when the time comes. Does that make sense? Okay. Anyone on Zoom? Like to say anything? Okay. All right. Let's jump into the next point, and that is the child's mindset. Page 67. This is a quote from a Mishnah, a teaching from the book of Ethics of Our Fathers. It's called the Mishnah. The Mishnah, there's many books, over 60 books. One of the books is called the Book of Ethics. 6 chapters. Each one is incredible. And in the 4th chapter, there's a teaching from an individual by the name of Elisha ben Avuya. Just tell you a little bit about him for a moment. Elisha ben Avuya, this is the only time he's quoted in all of Mishnah, although he was one of the greatest sages. Unfortunately, he went off the deep end. He chilled out. He said he doesn't want Judaism. There was a whole story. He saw a young boy who was asked by his parents to climb a ladder to bring down the mother birds. They could take the babies. Special mitzvah in the Torah that you don't take away the babies when the mother's there. And the boy fell and died. The Torah actually says respecting your parents and sending away the mother bird are things that will give you long life. He said, how could this be? The Torah says you get long life. And over here, the kid died. He said, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. And he dropped all of Judaism. But he was one of the greatest sages, one of the greatest minds. In the Mishnah, he's actually quoted not by his name many times, but by the word Acher, the other one. They didn't want to actually say his name because of what he went on to do. He had a great student, Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir was one of the greatest sages, quoted many times in the teachings. And they were once traveling on Shabbat, and his teacher was teaching him, although he wasn't practicing Judaism, he was still teaching him some great ideas in the Torah. And he was riding on a horse, on a donkey, and you're not allowed to. And also you're not supposed to travel outside the city limits. Rabbi Meir was just absorbed in listening to him. Suddenly his teacher says to his student, he says, stop walking. You can't go any further because the Torah says you shouldn't go 2,000 amot, which is about 3,000 feet, outside a city limit. So if there's no houses, you can't walk. Chicago, we don't get that problem. But if you're living like in Wheeling or one of those places, sometimes you could, if you want to take a long stroll on Shabbat, you could have that problem. So this teacher recognized that he was going out of the city limits, and he told his student, don't walk anymore because you're an observant Jew. He said, you also got to do it. But anyway, the point is that he was a great man. And one of the reasons it says that he went off was because he went into the Pardes. He went into the deepest secrets of the Torah, into the Kabbalistic garden of God in heaven. He went with 3 other colleagues. One died when he saw the greatness of God. The other one went crazy, which was himself, and I'm sorry, the other one went crazy, and then he went off the deep end, went against Judaism, and then the only one that went out good was Rabbi Akiva. That's a story that's given. So anyway, so this is a teaching. This is the only teaching that's brought from him in the Mishnah. Let's see what he teaches. Let's see his teaching here. Text number 6, page 67. Elizabeth, would you like to read it for us? Would you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, text 6?
Yeah.
Was it text 6?
Yes.
Okay. Elisha, the son of Avuya, would say, learning Torah as a child is comparable to ink inscribed on fresh paper. Learning Torah as an older person is comparable to ink inscribed on erased paper.
So this is his teaching. His teaching is that you got to learn Torah as a child. It's comparable to ink inscribed on fresh paper. Now, simply meaning you got to invest in the kids. And the next generation, if you invest in the kids, the next generation knows the Torah, you got a future. So therefore, got to make sure they continue to learn. But here's a question. This teaching is also pretty discouraging for adults that didn't get to learn when they were children. And the truth is that this teaching is not just for children. This is for everyone. This is a teaching in a Mishnah. It doesn't say children should not learn this section. Section for only children, advice for children. There's advice for everybody. So what is this advice? Teaching everyone, children, adults, everyone. What's the advice of it? And the answer is a very profound explanation. That the mission is not saying learn when you're a child, learn when you're an adult, but rather it's saying learn as a child. When you learn as a child, you learn to learn. When you're learning, you are learning. You're not asking. You're not thinking about 7 other things. When you're sitting in the classroom and your teacher is teaching you the alphabet, the ABCs, the Torah, you're listening. You're observing. You're not thinking about 7 other things. What does that mean? How does the Aleph connect with the base? The Gimel is different than the Vav. You're learning the Aleph. You're learning this verse in the Torah. You're taking it in. Adults, when they're learning, right away they're thinking, oh, that's interesting. Doesn't make any sense. I have a question on that one. That's actually something, oh, I'm going to share that with a friend of mine. You know, whenever you're learning, you're not listening. You're listening to think, how can I explain everything to, how does that make sense? How can I explain it to somebody else? You're taking all that information and bringing it to somewhere else, where you're not actually attentive listening. There's the Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, who's the Rebbe of Chabad. He would speak on Shabbat for many hours, sometimes for 5-6 hours. And people there's no way of recording it, because on Shabbat you can't use any electronics, and you can't use a pen and paper. But they wanted to have all the information that he said. So there were a few unique individuals who had photographic memory, the ability to sit and listen. And after Shabbos is over, they would sit there and they would repeat word for word verbatim, and the people would record it and quickly write down whatever they would say. Like this, they have everything written down. I actually have here in the room, I have 60, 70 books, and they're publishing more and more of the Rebbe's talks word for word. So I once heard one of these individuals share, how was he able to do it? What was the trick? What's the trick? He said, I'm a simple person. I'm not anything more special than anyone else. His name was Simon Jacobson. He's a very famous rabbi. He wrote a great book. If you don't have it, I highly recommend it. The book called Towards a Meaningful Life. And that's his website, towards-a-meaningful-life.com. So he said like this. What was the trick? When the Rebbe spoke, he just listened. He didn't think. He listened, he didn't think. Many people, when they're listening, they're thinking. You're listening? That's interesting. That doesn't make any sense. That is connected to something else. I'm going to share that with a friend of mine. Said, I didn't think. I just observed. I just listened to what he said. And that's the way he's able to take in. He started by listening for 10 minutes, then listening for 20 minutes, then being able to listen for an hour, then being able to listen for 5 hours, and being able to listen and hold it all in, retain it. Okay? And then share it. And that is the art of listening. That's the next point. This is what Alicia says. Be like a child. Listen to retain. Don't listen to interact, to think over, to question, to have something else. What does it make sense? Just listen. Let's see here, text number 7. Michael, you want to read text 7? Page 69.
I'll take a pass.
Okay. Lisa, would you like to read?
It'll take me too long to organize.
Okay, no problem. Okay, Daniel. Sandra, do you want to read?
Okay,
Okay, go.
text
Yeah.
7. When
Excellent.
students study with their mentor, they must divest their minds and thoughts from other matters, stripping themselves of all personal thoughts. failure to detach themselves from personal thoughts will obstruct their ability to absorb the communicated ideas. Additionally, when listening to the teacher's delivery, students must not employ their own intellect to understand the spoken concepts. If they do, then at that moment, they will not be in a state of receptivity, and they will not truly receive the concepts imparted by the teacher. Instead, they must set aside their own minds, only listening to and absorbing the ideas from the teacher. That is when they truly receive the communicated ideas. In other words, to be in a state of reception means to be in a state of bitul, self-surrender.
Beautiful. So what are we saying here? We're not saying that you should shut up your brain and not think. Of course you're thinking, but we're saying that you're just absorbing. You're not connecting it to something else. Actually, I remember when Simon Jacobson did this, was explaining this concept to us, he took out a paper. On the paper was a regular story. And he said, 90 seconds. Everyone read this paper. Read the story. Everybody read the whole thing. Then he stopped, said, repeat to me what you read. And the entire room, 20 of us, no one was able to repeat more than 50% of what they read. They just read it. Because, and he explained to us, when you were reading and you just read it, you weren't observing it. The whole time when you're reading it, you were thinking about what you're reading. You're connecting it to something else and interesting that doesn't make sense. You liked it, you're connecting your emotions with it. So you weren't absorbing it. You could try this yourself. Take a book and read it. And then stop and go back and say, could you repeat word for word of what you just read? And you could see a lot of times we can't, because we're not fully listening to what we're saying, even when we're ourselves are reading. So, we said before, the example, this guy that Sam, he comes late to the meeting, his friend says, you're always late, right? What did he really mean? Was he really saying, what's he really want to say? It's not that he's saying that he's always late. He's trying to say that, listen to me. Why did you come late today? Why did you come to this meeting late? That's what he's trying to say. He wants to connect to you over here. And before we go to the next point, I want to show a video. Okay? Oh, here's an interesting point. The same letters of listen, this is fascinating. Same letters of listen is silent. Right? If you remain silent, you're actually listening. So interesting point. Okay. All right. Now this video is an introduction for our final point of tonight's class.
When sound waves hit our eardrums, we hear, but are we truly listening? Often not. True listening involves a set of behaviors that form the foundation for authentic communication. To see this in action, let's eavesdrop on a conversation between adult siblings, Hannah, Leah, Ben, and Isaac. Their elderly mother is returning home after a hospital stay due to a bad fall. They're discussing her future care. As we listen in, we'll spot some effective listening behaviors, and some blunders too. Here's what we'll do. When a sibling displays a good listening behavior, they'll earn a medal. If they slip up, they'll get a zap to help correct the behavior. Ready?
Mom's coming home Tuesday. We need to plan her care. Dr. Johnson's concerned about her hypokalemia. I wonder if Dad can handle...
Dad's tough. We've all heard his Vietnam stories. I think he'll manage just fine.
Hannah interrupted, undermining effective listening.
Oh, I think I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Isaac, what exactly is hypokalemia? And what did Dr. Johnson recommend?
Leah admitted she didn't understand. That type of honesty is key to good listening.
Dr. Johnson suggests we contact Golden Years Manor, a nursing home. Hypokalemia is low potassium in the blood.
Isaac answered out of sequence, a subtle but important mistake in listening.
If I could, just for a second, I want to update you all on my marriage. We're seeing a therapist, and I'm not sure where it's going.
Ben changed the subject, a listening no-no.
But we can discuss that later.
Thanks for explaining, Isaac. I'm not sure about a nursing home, and I'm also worried about Dad being alone. But you're suggesting Mom would be better off at Golden Years. Can you explain why?
Hannah asked a clarifying question, an excellent listening move.
Dr. Johnson mentioned that hypokalemia can cause fatigue, irregular heartbeat, and muscle weakness, which might make it hard for her to breathe. The staff at Golden Years are trained for this. Oh, I didn't know any of that. Thanks for clarifying.
Ben acknowledged learning something new, an important listening behavior.
I think we should keep Mom at home.
Leah finalized her opinion too quickly after hearing the options. That's quite the opposite of good listening.
Actually, I take that back. I'd like to sleep on it before deciding.
Leah is now open to considering what others said. Good listening. We wish Mom a speedy recovery. Meanwhile, this conversation reminded us of listening behaviors that the Mishnah lists as crucial for effective communication. The more listening medals we earn, the better our communication will be, and our relationships will be greatly enhanced as a result.
Okay, so this is an introduction to our final point, which is we're going to read a text from another Mishnah, another teaching from the book of Ethics of Our Fathers. And that is that it says there are 7 things that a goylem, you know what a goylem is? A goylem is an immature person. A go, you know the story of the golem from Prague, the statue that he just followed his orders. Whatever he was told to do, he did. So there's 7 things in a golem, and the opposite is in a wise person. Let's see what a wise person has, and we'll see what the opposite is in someone who's not so wise. So let's read here text 8. Daniel, you want to read for us text 8 over here? Page 71.
Seven traits are present in a golem or a mature person, as 7 in a Hakan or a wise person. Wise people. Number 1, do not speak in front of one who is greater than they in wisdom or number. Do not interrupt the words of another. 3, do not hasten to respond. 4, ask to the point, answer as is proper. 5, respond to the first point first and last point last. 6, declare I have not heard, they did not hear. And 7, concede to the truth. The opposite of these traits are to be found in the golem.
Okay, thank you. So over here we see there's 7 things. We're going to talk for a moment on 5 of them, 2 through 6, because they're really directly affecting of our conversation of today. And that is, number 1, and these are practical lessons that we can implement in our day-to-day way of living and interacting with people. Number 1, don't intrude, don't interrupt. When someone is speaking, let them finish. Even if you know all the information they're going to say, let them say their point. First of all, maybe you don't know everything they're saying, but also they'll also feel good if you let them speak. But even more, like we said earlier, when you hear them out, you can connect to them. You know what they're saying, you know who they are. It's an opportunity. Number 2, a lot of times when someone says something, we give an answer instantly. Of course, if they're asking what's 2 plus 2, yeah, you give an answer 4. But if someone's asking a question, take a moment, pause, breathe in, let the question sink in for a moment, and then respond. that moment that you pause, it's like saying, I heard you. And then you give your answer. So that's number 2. Number 3, ask a question. When someone's speaking to you, if there's an interaction, if you ask them something about what they said, that shows that you're actually listening to them. They said their point, you walk away, have a good day. But if you could make a conversation and continue the conversation, that shows that there's an interaction here. Number 4, when they ask multiple questions, there must be a reason why they're asking those questions in this order. So therefore, if you respond in the right order, that's respecting their format. It also might get an ability to better remember your answers and the interaction. And number 5, if you don't know what the answer is, say you didn't hear. There's many interpretations in this one. Number 1, you could acknowledge what someone says, and if you never heard it, you can acknowledge that you never heard it. And number 2, when you don't understand something, you can communicate you don't understand. So many times people are like, I know everything. I'm better, nobody knows anything better than I know it. Right? I could say it all. Like a great leader doesn't know everything. It says Moses himself in the Torah, there were a number of times he said, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm going to ask God. Well, I'll find out. It doesn't show on your lowness. On the contrary, it shows that you're greater. It shows that you are working on yourself, that you're not the most greatest person. Every person has something to work on being a little better. And so these are a few points that we can implement into our day-to-day life. And we'll conclude with one final text, text 9, page 74. And this is a great line. For a 14th century rabbi, sound like this. Did you ever observe that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth? Why did God create you with 2 ears and just 1 mouth? And that is why? So Daniel says it's echolocation, but here is a very powerful. He says a very powerful idea. It's to imply that you shall listen twice as much as you should speak. Speaking is your animal soul. Your animal soul wants you to speak. The animal soul is like, I need to say something. It's about me. You know the joke? Conclude with this joke. The guy goes on a date. He's there. He starts speaking. Speaks for 10 minutes about his life, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. He's sharing all about everything that happened in his life. 2 hours. After finally 2.5 hours of speaking all about his life, he turns to the woman and he says to her, I think it's been a while. I was speaking a lot about myself. Why don't you speak now? Why don't you share something? Why don't you let me know? What do you think about me? Okay. The point is that I guess my way of speaking, I don't have I didn't deliver that joke right. But anyway, the point is that the speaking is all animal related. It's all our self-related. Listening, our ears, is caring about someone else. And if we can internalize that and really implement this, then we can move on to next week's class, which God willing, next Tuesday, where we'll be able to learn how to disagree without being disagreeable, which is an essential skill of maintaining, of course, a very healthy relationship. I look forward, God willing, to next week's class. Thank you all for joining, and you're very welcome.